So it's been almost a year, actually, because RLCS ended close to a year ago. Obviously, RLCS 21-22 is going to end here. It's been 9 months. It's been 9 months since we did our last rankings. A lot has changed since then. A lot of new players moving up there. Maybe not some surprises overall. Not too many new players on the list from the last time, but a lot of players pushed out of the list. And we got a player from each of the top teams that I could kind of guarantee would be top teams, I think, for this split to do the rankings. And the instructions were rank, based off the winter split plus, how people are doing in scrims, what your thoughts are on them, like anything like that. And I did it this weekend, so it doesn't really include yesterday's finals, in which Us Are Bad took the championship. So maybe that'll have an effect. Maybe that didn't have an effect because people probably wouldn't take that too much into account anyway. But it would include the kind of qualifier times. So let's get into it. Let's just get going. And keep a note, I asked for the top 20 as well, players, and scrubbed people's who ranked their own teammates in the end to keep it, I guess, non-biased. And that means that we have a top 15 ranking. I think in the past I asked for top 25, maybe even top 30 for some people, and we did a top 20, so we're down to top 15. And so it's a very, very tough list to get into, which makes it exciting to go to number 15. And I have a feeling I might have forgotten something on this slide. So let's just check. No, we didn't. But the one thing I didn't have is Mock's age. It's not listed on Wikipedia, and I did message him, but he didn't respond. But Mock coming in at 15, brand new to any top list. He's 17. Beautiful. Let's update that live if we possibly can. Yes, we can. There we go. Mock is 17, new to the list, but not new to competition. He has been playing since RLCS, but they weren't quite getting the results to get into, I guess, a top 15 at that time when he was playing with Sprat and Cobo, for example. And didn't have the best winter split in terms of team results, but has come here as the very top. And you can have a look at the assists and whatnot. His assists, he was 5th in all of OCE in terms of assists, and then 36 in terms of goals. That includes all of the players who played at least 25 games of the winter split. It doesn't include any stats from the majors. As a note, it is purely the OCE matches that those stats come from, and he had decent earnings as well. Overall, pretty even rankings across the board from the rankers as well. The highest ranking that he got was 13. So the fact that he's coming in 15 shows just how little deviance there actually was amongst the rankers. Everybody kind of agreed he was sitting around this spot. Moving on to number 14, we have Zenulous, who, well, I mean, had an amazing weekend at least. So maybe that moved him up, maybe it didn't. But Zenulous has come out here as, spoilers, the top player on Team Bliss. And it's awesome to see. He's moved up a lot in terms of placings. He was, I think, number 20 in the previous placing, which would actually make him +6. He was number 20 in terms of the end of RLCS rankings. Now he's number 14. And Bliss are looking good. Bliss are looking like they could contend to get some more top 4s like they did in the winter event. Just by the fact that they were able to take down Renegades on the weekend. So that's massive for Zen. And he had a bit more of a spread. The highest ranked anybody gave him, somebody gave him a 9th. So there was one person in particular who very, very highly ranked them, but nothing too low either. It was all in a very close range to the 11 to 14th kind of area. And I think, I think the lowest he was ranked was 16th. So there you go. Number 13, we're going to move down to Kaka, who is also new to the list. If you remember back in RLCSX, Kaka, Finn were on Donkey Squad, and they weren't quite able to get the results in the matches, but they were getting like really good qualifier, group stages, big matches. I think they got a win over Ground Zero at one point, but they didn't have any showings in the playoffs to get any of them in here. But for me, Kaka's been easily the best player for Riot for me, but he's been also the consistent player. One of the most consistent players, I feel like, for the winter split, where even when things were going bad, he was trying to do as much as possible. Kind of is reflected a little bit in his stats, but as we know, Riot Gaming did not have a great winter split overall, with 3 5th places, not many wins in the playoffs. They kept going through the upper brackets and then taking the losses over and over again, going 0-8 in playoffs for the first 2 events, and then finally getting some game wins after that. So a little bit of a rough one for Kaka, but signs are good, coming in with a top 4 in the Anzac Day Invitational with Shores is pretty good signs that Kaka's minions might be able to, also be like Team Bliss, pushing into that top 4. Not personally sure on them pushing further than that, but we will find out because it's a very, very tough competition at the moment. And in terms of rankings, another very, very consistent one. But, I think even more so, the highest ranked person, the person who ranked him highest ranked him 12th, and the lowest was 15th. So, very, very consistent ranked. So, honestly, well done to the power rankers as well, who all got him within a range, I guess. And since we're going to start moving into, I think, names that everybody already knows, I decided to put the honorable mentions here after 13th place. So Finn was very, very close, actually, to getting 15th. A lot of he had a much wider range of rankings, but he was very, very close, just a few decimal points off, making it into the top 15. Siki, and then Vortex. I think Vortex was interesting because he wasn't particularly ranked highly by anyone as far as I recall. I think he did have a 15th, but every single ranker put them in their top 20. So every single person who ranked put Vortex in the top 20. So big shout out to Vortex, and yeah, so he just missed out as well. Siki and Vortex. That's kind of crazy. You think about it, like Finn has great mechanics. Siki is, Siki, a year ago he was, he was one of the top. He had taken a split off at that point, played one event of the split, but, it was 3 months before then, that previous ranking, that he was probably number 1 on the list after... Or maybe a little bit lower, but he would have been top 3. So kind of crazy to think how good all the talent is right now that Siki's been pushed up into the honorable mentions. Heading on to number 12 is going to be Express. And again, that's just showing just how tough this competition is. I can kind of see as well why he would be falling into this position. He's not a carry type player, and a lot of the players above at this point in time are going to be carry like players or have the ability to carry. So overall, it's very hard for him to shine, though I think the way he played yesterday in the Anzac Day Invitational is going to set him in a very good. Well, it was a very, very outstanding performance and kind of reminiscent of how they played in RLCSX. And I think that's more around the team. It looks like the team is playing much more like a team, I guess, much more rotational based off yesterday's performance, and that's going to favor Express. So I think we might see Express really rise here, especially if Ground Zero have a great split, which obviously winning yesterday's event means that they are in a good spot to do. But, you know, you compare it to the end of RLCSX, where they were super dominant. They won the entire thing there. They were winning pretty much every single event of the split. They'd lose one event per split in the previous 2 splits, and he was ranked number 3. Now he is ranked number 12. That being said, if you compared Winter to the fall split, then I don't think he would. I think he would have probably been around the 6th, 7th mark in that one. So it wouldn't have been such a quick fall down. But yeah, stats wise, also not super high up there, but good earnings, of course. And Express probably would have been higher had they been able to make the major, but a 7th place pretty much cost them. Now, in the past, I've avoided ties in these lists and invented tiebreakers. And this time I was like, you know what? I'll leave the ties as they are. Keep the ties in. I think it's still very interesting to see, and we'll hopefully, we'll hopefully see the separation of these 2 players. We actually have 2 ties, so we'll hopefully see the separation of these 2 players in the future. And the first one in the tie is going to be MISTY at number 10. And obviously a huge rise for MISTY, and I think we start heading into players that, as I said, have carry ability. And in the event that they won, in that first winter event, MISTY completely carried. He popped off. He had a tournament winning performance, and we'll see if that can happen again. But people are rating MISTY at the moment. People are definitely rating MISTY. And let's see. The highest he was rated was 7th. Somebody did rate him number 7. That was the highest. And overall, pretty solidly rated across the board at the same time. In fact, much more consistently rated than the next person, who had some outstandingly high ratings and some outstandingly low ones, and that would be Hawk. Hawk tying up with MISTY, obviously being the carry for Juiced Bandits last split, and I guess earning his spot onto Direwolves with that. Didn't have the impressive results, didn't get the earnings that maybe a top 10 would be expected to get. But stats-wise, goals and shots, number 1 for each. Statistically, he was on top of the board, and had some very high rating. Highest rating, actually highest rating, 8th, but had some, I guess, detractors as well. Went as low as 14th for some people. Rating as low as 14th, so there you go. And yeah, I mean, obviously we're going to see Hawk. I think we're going to see Hawk move up here as well, especially based on how he played on Direwolves this weekend. Leading up to RLCS, had a pretty good performance overall, but certainly had important games, where he was a large factor of them taking wins and getting into that 2nd place. So we'll see. I think Hawk moves up, but it is very tough to move up. I mean, he has to move up even over MISTY, who he's tied with, and also everybody else over the top of this list. That would be CJCJ next. And this goes a little extra longer because he's our first player who also went to the major on this list, coming in 9th. He has actually moved up from the end of RLCSX, but maybe, yeah. Moved up 1 from the last time. I think he's been at 8 before, in the previous one before that. So he's always maintained this kind of ranking, and it's very interesting. His highest ranked was 5th. So someone did rank him 5th. Somebody ranked him much higher than the others. Nobody ranked him worse than, I mean, somebody ranked him 13th. So I guess that gives you a little context. But most people did rank him around 9th, 10th. That 5th basically cancelled out the 14th at that point. But CJ has the potential in my mind to be one of the best. But for me, he's had consistency. And I don't know if that, I wouldn't say that's necessarily on him, but consistency as a team could factor into it. But either one day he'll be popping off, scoring every goal, being amazing, and the next goal he's hitting every next game he's hitting every crossbar, or the next day he's hitting every crossbar. And it might just be the factor of the team, whether the team are playing well or not. Shows off whether CJ is popping off or not, because he's usually the goal scorer. So, as you can see, 2nd in goals, 2nd in shots, just behind Hawk. Statistically, right at the very top of the competition as well. And even assists. Like, he's still high up there on assists, even though he is so up there. I mean, you look at Hawk, despite being so up there, was quite a chunk lower on the assists at the same time. And it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see if Renegades are able to go back to the major, because the competition is getting harder and harder. Though, I think if you look at the rankings from all the players, you kind of get a feeling that there's, realistically, as we've been talking about, 3 to 4 teams in the competition that they will have expectations for. So we have move on to the next tie. So our other tie. We have 2 ties. Next tie is going to be at 7th place. And the first player in that tie is Scrub from Pioneers, which I think was a little wild as well. His highest rank was 5th. Similar to CJ, interestingly enough. And lowest rank was 9th. Or actually had a rank of around 11th. His lowest rank was 11th. Second lowest rank was 9th. So, a little bit of a spread there for Scrub. But Scrub's really impressed me with his growth. I think he was usually the player who had maybe the most nerves or most difficulty playing the playstyle that they wanted to play in the very early days, in the fall split, for example. And then in the winter split, I felt like he was the major factor in the success of Pioneers, in terms of creating chaos and creating space for both of his teammates, who are, well, as we know, are obviously going to be ranked higher than him here. But I think without Scrub, you see a lot less from Super Lucky and BANANAHEAD overall. So, awesome to see him here. Plus 11. Huge move up on the list. I think the biggest move up overall on the list is a plus 11. And obviously very high earnings. Equal the highest earnings. Statistically, not so much up there. Results-wise, though, definitely up there. And he's tied with somebody that you guys would be surprised from the previous lists, of course, would be Torsos. Torsos has tied with Scrub. A little bit of a surprise to me, even. I think I had him a little bit higher than Scrub. Yeah, just a touch higher than Scrub. And he had somebody rank him as high as 3rd. So he had a highest ranking of 3rd and the lowest ranking of 12th overall. 11th and 12th. So huge spread here. Kind of crazy for me. Had a really rough first event or early part of the split, but I think to me for a large part of the winter split he was the only person achieving anything for Ground Zero at the time. And in that second and third event, the second event, he had a massive performance in the upper bracket, but then probably the worst performance of the split in the lower bracket. And then in the third event, had an amazing performance, maybe a bit outclassed by AMPHIS in the performance, but, you know, obviously winning. So I had Torsos a little bit higher than this, but this is where it averaged out. And any which way, it was a disappointing result for Torsos through the split. That 7th place having a huge impact, maybe the 3rd place as well. If they could have got the 2nd place there, then and which would have obviously lowered KCP's points at the same time, they might have been able to go. So very, very interesting results all around. And yeah, the lowest I think I've seen Torsos ever. I think this is the lowest I've ever seen Torsos ranked. Moving on to number 6, just ahead is going to be BANANAHEAD. And funnily enough, highest ranked was number 4. So Torsos was ranked, he had his highest rank number 3. The highest rank that anybody gave BANANAHEAD was 4th, but had much more consistent ranks across the board. Everybody had him in their top 8, top 9-ish, compared to Torsos having some double digits in there. Obviously a very, very good split, and barring the major, BANANAHEAD to me was the best player of KCP for the winter split. It was absolutely incredible. Statistically, was the best player for them for sure, and just very, very good playmaker overall. And yeah, still very, very young. It'll be really interesting to see. I think right now, based on the rankings, we've got very, very high overall rankings for KCP compared to Ground Zero coming into Spring Split. So it'll be really interesting to see if Ground Zero are able to gain that ground just with straight results in the Spring Split to bump their individual rankings above. Because I think a lot of people will take the overall results of the winter split into account for their player rankings. Number 5, and we get our last player for us are bad, Ground Zero. So very, very surprising to see all 3 of these players kind of out of here, considering the last time they were ranked, it was AMPHIS, Torsos, and Express as all of our top 3 when we were ranked them at the end of RLCS at the after the championships. So obviously a large fall since then. Maybe less of a fall than necessary, but you know, that's probably on them for having slow starts every split. I don't think they're going to have a slow start this split. I think they're going to be one of the teams, if not the team to beat in the bracket. But I do know that a lot of people are saying, you know, in scrims at least, that you know, that there are bigger teams out there than Ground Zero. So that would certainly make sense as well. And the highest rated that anybody rated him is 2nd. So somebody did rank him. Well, actually, I don't know if that's not quite 2nd, not quite 2nd. No. Somebody did. Yeah, somebody did rank him 2nd. So he had a very high ranking. Overall, had a pretty consistent ranking. The lowest was 7th. Somebody threw him in at 7th. Actually, no. Somebody put him as 10th. One person put him in as 10th. That probably very much affected his ranking. So one person put AMPHIS as 10th. Wow. All right. Moving down. Actually, it probably didn't, because he is a significant margin away from this next person. So he is a significant margin away. It probably didn't affect his ranking whatsoever. However, this is, I think, the highest we've seen KAMII on a list like this in years. I mean, he's always been in like that 5 area. But KAMII's moved up. People are really scared of him right now. People are really predicting highly. And for a note, pretty much everybody gave me their ranks of everybody in the top 20 bar themselves. So they did rank their teammates. And, CJ and myself both had KAMII lower than this. It was largely opposition, I think, who put KAMII into this position in the 4th. Somebody ranked him 2nd in OCE. That was his highest ranking. And he didn't have any lower ranks than 7th. 7th was the lowest rank. Most people kind of having him within their top 4, top 5 overall. So very, very highly ranked. Very, very consistent player. I think it's very interesting to see because I feel like I personally, and maybe a lot of people, underrate him, but his opponents certainly don't. And whenever you talk to anybody, they hate playing against KAMII. He's got the bumps. He's got such a huge consistency, and he's been adding a lot more mechanics over the past 6 months. So yeah, that's getting nutty with KAMII coming in 4th place. I think we might have seen that during the very short domination of Renegades when they won the Spring Series and RLO Grand Slam 2 years ago in 2020. And then before that, we might have seen a KAMII coming in 3rd or 4th during the time that he moved from Pale Horse to Chiefs. That's probably the last time we saw him that high. It's just kind of crazy. And not only that, it was very, very close with him being in the next spot, in that 3rd spot. It was very, very close with FIBERR. So FIBERR comes in 3rd. He's moved up as well. He's moved up 3 rankings. One of the highest mechanical players. For me, very, very... He's able to step up when the chips are down. I think when everything is going poorly for the team, or did for Direwolves in the last split, you'd still see FIBERR doing so much on the pitch, and he was able to 1v3 at times and keep them in series when it felt like they had 0 chance. But this weekend didn't need to do quite so much. Had both Hawk and MISTY performing. It's looking much more like a team, and yet still FIBERR has the mechanics to pull off the big plays. So certainly going to be a scary team, Direwolves, if they all get going. And do we expect FIBERR to stay up here? I actually expect FIBERR to fall down on this list. Not necessarily because I expect him to go poorly or anything, but we'll see what the results are. I think the results might not help them in terms of the overall results, but also I just think that his 2 teammates are going to show up if they do have the results and take a lot or some of the spotlight away from FIBERR, and it'll be much more of a team-oriented gameplay if they are to win. But we'll see. MISTY says in chat that he's going to take all of the spotlight from FIBERR. Right? I mean, he's capable. He did it once or twice. Did it twice, definitely, on your two tournament wins. So we'll see if it happens again. A big thing for Direwolves is that they didn't win this previous event yesterday, the Anzac Day Invitational. If they had won, I'd have said they had no chance in RLCS, because we know what happens after they win an event. They can never back it up. Too much expectations. But they came 2nd, so they're fine. They're going to be all right. Oh, yeah. So you're probably going to guess where the next 2 rankings are. You should probably be able to guess. Maybe chat. Who's number 2? Who's number 1? Before we move on, we'll see what you guys think it is. But I think based on the power rankings, this should be fairly clear. Cobo number 1. Oh, guys, somebody tell him. Fair enough. Well, I think most of you, all but one of you, were correct. The only person incorrect was the dumb one. Super Locky is number 2, which obviously means FIBERR is number 1. Super Locky wasn't, for me, the best player of the winter split, but he was the best player from OCE at the LAN. He was also amazing this weekend in the Anzac Day Invitational. He was a star for KCP there, and might be a split here where he moves up even further. If they win the split, then he could end up being number 1 on this list. Really, really incredible. I was super, super impressed with him at the LAN, at the major. Really, really popped off. Scored more goals than anyone else from OCE. Was consistent throughout, even from the very first series. And didn't show any nerves for his first LAN. That was awesome to see. I hope to see him again at another LAN someday. But that kind of performance at a LAN is very scary if you're another team looking at this. He was already rated fairly highly. Often rated as the best player of KCP at the end of RLCS when they'd only had 1 split under their belt. So the end of RLCS with 1 split under their belt, their first ever split, a 2nd, a 3rd, and a 9th, I think it was. And he was still ranked He was still ranked 11th at that time. But statistically, not so high up there from the winter split. But this was essentially unanimous. Excluding, when you exclude people's picks of their own teammates at number 1 and 2 and 3, then FIBERR was unanimously voted number 1. So most people ranked him number 1 regardless, even with their teammates on the list. But after taking out the teammates, he was unanimously voted number 1. And that gives you an idea of how much of an impact people still feel that FIBERR has. Very, very scary player to play against. Very, very consistent. I haven't seen as much out of him recently, though. So I was a little surprised maybe that all the players had him at number 1. But you can't deny that he wasn't the best player of the winter split, that he's not the best player of Renegades. And now he's kind of on a mountain, but like I think he's very toppleable at the moment. I think this is the first time I've ever seen such a consistent pick of FIBERR at the very top amongst players, but I think he's very toppleable at the moment. I think there's a lot of players who are going to be gunning for FIBERR's spot, and he's going to have to really hold on to it. Have to really, really hold on to it. As a note, just in case you guys didn't see, funnily enough, both Renegades and Pioneers end up with the exact same earnings, 7,200 for the winter split, with the extra money coming, $1,000 per player coming from the major for Pioneers, and obviously Renegades coming out as the number 1 seed from OCE, getting the money there. So overall, loving to see how good the quality of our top 15 is, our top 10 in particular, or top 11, I guess, with the tie in the top 10. All of those guys are players that I think would do well on any team, would do well internationally, which is really exciting. It's showing the mechanics era of OCE, and I'm really looking forward to the spring split.